Welcome into Seattle Seahawks Today. I am your host, Tom Downey, and we have our final 53-man roster projection for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, that is 53. You might see 55 thrown out there, but that just refers to the 2 players you can promote each week from the practice squad. The cut deadline is rapidly approaching. It is Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. By that deadline, Seattle must be down to 53 players. The practice squad is bigger this year. It's 16, but there will still be some difficult cuts for Seattle to make. Before we get into my projections here, who else is finally glad that the NFL is here and the Seahawks get to play some football? I assume that every single person watching this agrees with me. If so, I want y'all to go like this video right now. We're going to begin at quarterback, where it's Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, I think with an uncertain future with just injuries and all that and COVID, I think Seattle's going to go with the veteran guy, an unusual training camp. Anthony Gordon, he might just find his way down to the practice squad, as you'll see later on in the video, but I'm going Geno as quarterback too. On now to the backfield. Chris Carson, he's good to go. Carlos Hyde. I think DJ Dallas is going to stick around as well. Nick Bellore, I think, makes the roster as the fullback. That's not guaranteed. I think Travis Homer also makes the team. So Seattle, as they often do, they go a little bit deeper at the running back spot. I will put Rashaad Penny on the PUP list to start the season, so he will not count against that 53-man roster to start. Now, if there's one thing I know about the NFL and cut down day, there's always some surprise cuts. So for the Seattle Seahawks, who do you guys think it will end up being? I am going to make this the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get the ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down and make your best guesses. Now, in our last 53-man roster projection, I got aggressive and said it's going to be Josh Gordon at wide receiver 3, and I have officially changed my mind because that's not the path I think that's going to happen here. I don't think Gordon's even going to be reinstated in time for week 1. Seattle, though, did go get a receiver, a familiar face as well. Paul Richardson is back, and although Philip Dorsett, David Moore, John Ursula could all compete for that wide receiver 3 role behind a locked and loaded great 1-2 punch of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I think Richardson has a good chance to be that wide receiver 3, offers you some vertical ability. Is he going to be 2017 Richardson? Probably not. But you don't necessarily need that anymore if you're Seattle. I hope they let Russ cook more. You guys should know that by now. But I think Seattle will allow him to compete for that role. He might be a little bit behind, having not been in camp the entire offseason and camp and all of that, but I think he's going to be just fine. Tight end is where I had to really think about just how many guys I wanted to put on the Seahawks roster. Greg Olsen, well, he's going to start, I think. Will Dissly will play a role. Jacob Hollister has a pretty hefty salary. He could be cut and then brought back at a cheaper rate, something Seattle did last year with a few different players. Colby Parkinson, though, was the true toss-up for me. For a while, I thought he was going to get back and be good to go in time for week 1. I no longer feel that way. I think he's going to begin the year on that NFI list, and maybe he returns in the middle of the season. Maybe he's an IR stash. There were some notable cuts, though, at tight end. I don't have Luke Wilson on the practice squad. I almost put him on the 53-man roster, so I would not be surprised if A, he made it there, or if someone else was able to snag him off of waivers once Seattle makes those cuts. But it is going to be tricky for the Seattle Seahawks to figure out just how many tight ends they want to carry this year. Now, we're asking for some help here. If you guys want a full cuts and roster breakdown video, I need you guys to share this video. There's a lot of cuts. They're all going to come in at the same time. And as you guys know, the Seattle Seahawks are not the only channel here at Chat Sports. So if you want to be a higher priority come roster cutdown day, let's show the powers that be that you really want it. So share this video. Let's go to the offensive line. I got 10, and it ends up looking for a nice, even depth chart. Funny how that turned out, huh? I got Dwayne Brown, Mike Iupati. I think B.J. Finney still starts over Ethan Posick, although I am not as confident as I was back when the camp first began and Justin Britt was cutting all those other guys. But we'll see what happens there. Damian Lewis is going to start. Brandon Shell also going to start at right tackle. Cedric Ogbuehi is kind of banged up right now, so we'll see on that one. But I think Jordan Simmons makes the team along with Phil Haynes as the backup guards. And Jamarco Jones has enough position flex as well. He might end up being your 10th or 9th offensive lineman on the Seahawks. We have a deal alert for you guys as well. Seahawks jerseys, they are back on sale. Chatsports.com/Seahawks jerseys. That'll save you Seahawks jersey, 25% off. They got Russell Wilson, some custom ones, some DK Metcalf, Bobby Wagner for you big-time defensive fans out there. I will put that link in the comments and in the description. It is chatsports.com/Seahawks jersey. To the defensive line where there's some tricky discussions to be had here. LJ Collier, Poona Ford, Jaron Reed, Bruce Irvin, Rasheem Green, Benson Mayowa, and I think Alton Robinson are all locked. Seattle needs more depth on the defensive line, so I'm going to go with DeMarcus Christmas and Brian Monet. There could be a surprise signing, but I'm not going to project any of those for this. But you see Darrell Taylor on there with that asterisk. At this point in the offseason and preseason and camp, he hasn't been out there. He hasn't been a factor, and Pete Carroll's made this point many a time. He has to get out there to make an impact in the season, let alone week 1. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think at least for the beginning of the year, Taylor will start on one of those NFI lists. He could even, by the way, potentially just go on IR for the year. He's got a whole bunch of just ramp-up time to be able to play once he gets fully healthy. So I am not anticipating a big impact from Taylor this year, which is super unfortunate for him and for the Seattle Seahawks. But of course, that means Seattle could kind of use another pass rusher. I would think you guys would agree with me, but of course I want to hear your actual votes. Do the Seattle Seahawks need to get another pass rusher, be it Clowney or somebody else? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Over to linebacker now. I will continue to put Bruce Irvin both at defensive end and linebacker because he'll play that hybrid role, so I just wanted to make that clear. I'm going to keep KJ Wright on there. I think Jordan Brooks will carve out a role sooner than later. Of course, you're going to keep Bobby Wagner. And then you go with a really good depth trio of Ben Burke-Irvin, Cody Barton, and Griffin as well. In fact, I think this linebacking core for Seattle is the best linebacking core in the NFL, and I'd argue by a pretty significant margin. I think it's that good. I think it's the Seahawks' best positional unit. You could maybe argue quarterback, but let me know what you guys think. What position group is the very best for Seattle? We go to the secondary now. I'll group these all together here because there are some overlap. Of course, you got Shaquille Griffin, Quentin Dunbar, Trey Flowers. Those guys are locks at corner. I think you keep Ugo Amadi and Nico Thorpe as depth special teams guys. Marquise Blair seems primed to start at the nickel corner spot. That's a very good sign for Seattle. That leaves Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs. I'll keep Lano Hill as the backup safety. I go a little bit lighter at safety because Blair can shift there if needed. I think you can stash some guys on the practice squad as well. I will list DJ Reed on here. I don't think he's going to be good to go this year, so he will eventually be an IR stash. But I did like that pickup by the Seattle Seahawks. Finally, special teams. No real surprise here. There's been no competition. Jason Myers, Michael Dixon, and Tyler Ott are your three special teams guys. And then you'll rotate Lockett and Moore and Homer and DJ Dowse when they all make the team as your special teams return guys. Now, before we get into my practice squad projections, which I can fully guarantee will not be 100% accurate because no one's ever gotten them all right, who do you want to sneak onto the practice squad? If you could pick one guy, who would it be? For me, it's actually the first guy on this list. That is one Anthony Gordon. I wanted to find a spot on the active roster, couldn't pull it off, but as an undrafted free agent, I think you'll be able to sneak him on down. Deeper, at receiver, Freddie Swain, the 6th-round pick. I think you can stash him. I kind of like Penny Hart, too. And then Cody Thompson, who, if there is a surprise roster addition, I think he might be the guy. He has impressed so far at camp. 2 different tight ends. I went younger instead of the veteran Luke Wilson. I went with Tyler Mabry, and I went with Steven Sullivan, Kyle Fuller, and Chad Wheeler, and Tommy Champion, all on the offensive line here. Those are key additions for the Seattle Seahawks when it comes to that offensive line. Having extra depth, it matters in the NFL. If you go too thin, you're not going to be happy with your results. All right, I mentioned Champion. P.J. Johnson was a more recent addition by the Seattle Seahawks. I like that pickup as a potential practice squad guy. Cedric Lattimore is an undrafted free agent. There's been, I think it's 2 years in a row now, a UDFA has made the Seahawks roster at defensive tackle. I think that streak stops this year. Recent signing, we're just going to call him P to T because it's way easier to say. He might be another depth guy they try and develop along. And then in the secondary, Seattle has options. I would watch out for, by the way. I didn't do it on my actual 53, but watch out for one of Ryan Neal or Chris Miller finding their way onto the 53-man roster. If Seattle goes lighter at, say, offensive line, it might make room for one of those defensive backs.